This is question 15 from section 1 of the 2016 TSA paper. In this question we were asked which of the options is a conclusion that can be drawn from the passage. So let's look at the passage and what it says. It says, scientists investigated the effects of bedtime routine on child development, and they asked the kids to complete a number of tests. They detail what those tests are. They're on number skills, reading word cards, and constructing designs from shapes. But the point here is there's multiple tests on different cognitive skills. And then if we look at the second sentence, it starts saying, although the hour the children went to bed had little or no effect on their performance. So that's one fact, that the hour they went to bed had no effect. They then say, having no set bedtime often led to lower scores. And then lastly, they say the largest effect was in 3-year-olds. It affected both boys and girls, and they scored lower on all 3 tests compared to people who kept a more rigid bedtime. So if we look, all of these are factual statements about what the research was in sentence 1 and what the research found in the other 3 statements. So there's no moral argument here. What kind of question is this? We're looking basically to summarise the research. So we're looking for the outcome of this research. Our conclusion is going to be taking the facts found in the experiment and summarising that. So now let's have a look at the options and how they compare to the facts. Okay, so here I've put the evidence. I've ignored sentence 1 because that just sets out the details of the experiment. But I've put here the findings that the hour had little to no effect, that having no set bedtime did have an effect, and the largest effect was in 3-year-olds. And we're looking for a conclusion that follows from the evidence and not something that goes beyond the evidence. That would be assuming too much. So we'll look at each of these options and see which of them follows from the evidence and doesn't go beyond it. So first let's look at A. A says that the more fixed the bedtime routine, the better the intellectual development. Is that something that follows from the evidence, or does it go beyond it? Well, if we look, the evidence only says that having no set bedtime led to lower scores. It doesn't say that the more fixed your bedtime, the higher your scores are. So the evidence is only talking about what happens in the worst cases. So it looks like A goes beyond that evidence. So we'll put A in that column. Next, if we look at B, B says not having a fixed bedtime could disrupt cognitive development in young children. So firstly, this isn't a very strong conclusion because it says may. And secondly, if we compare it to the evidence, it looks like it's relevant to all the evidence. So it's talking about the unfixed bedtime. It's specific to young children, so the evidence mentions that 3-year-olds were especially affected. And it says that their cognitive growth might be disrupted, which corresponds to them having lower scores. So it looks like we can't find anything that goes beyond the evidence. So we'll put it in that column for now. If we find something else that goes in that column, then we might have to compare. But for now, that's in that column. Let's look at C. C says that parents should be more careful about their children's bedtimes. So this is a should statement, and therefore it's definitely saying something beyond just summarising the evidence. So we'll immediately put that in this column. It's worth noting that the experiment didn't say that the children who didn't have set bedtimes was because the parents weren't being careful. So this is introducing new concepts. It's going beyond the evidence. Now let's look at D. D says that reduced or disrupted sleep, so not having enough sleep, at key times in development, so at key ages, could affect the child's health throughout their life. Well, the part about key ages is good because that corresponds to this last piece of evidence, that it's especially effective in 3-year-olds. But it says could affect their health for their whole life. So for the whole life is quite a strong claim, and the evidence only talks about their test scores at that particular age. So it looks like this goes beyond the evidence. Now if we look at E says that varying a child's bedtime is likely to lead to cognitive disorders. And this suffers similar problems to D. Firstly, it says likely, which is in general quite a strong claim, so we might be suspicious of it. But secondly, the experiment didn't talk about cognitive disorders. Having low test scores is different from having a cognitive disorder. So this talks about something that goes beyond the evidence. And therefore we can see the only thing that actually follows from the evidence is B, so that's going to be our answer.